What's up, carp freaks, and welcome to Carp Life. Today I'm going to be fishing my first session on a new syndicate water that I've joined in South Yorkshire. But before we head off over there, I've come to Graphic Innovations to check on the progress of a new van that we've got going on as a competition for capital competitions. Let's go and take a look. So this is a brand new VW T6 transporter. Well, it's bits of a VW T6 transporter at the moment. But this just shows you the level of the attention to detail that we're going to make sure that we put on the most incredible prizes that we can. Obviously, right now, it's a white van, but that's not how it's going to be. It's going to be wrapped in a matte military green, which I'm guessing is that there. So it's going to be wrapped in that matte military green. It's going to have gloss black detailing. Inside it's going to be soundproofed, carpeted. It's hard to visualize the finished product right now when it looks like this, but I think it's going to look absolutely incredible. Right, here we go. Well, I've just arrived at my new syndicate lake for my very first session on here. We're only a short drive actually from Graphic Innovations, where we left behind that VW T6, which was in lots of bits. Look at this for a mucky dog. Look at that one. I've got him. I've got him. Look at that. It's not Hans Gruber. It's Hans Gruber's girlfriend. Go on over there. Go and get Jamie Muddy. Let me do the whole thing again. First session, blah, 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 left behind. I have to do it again, I can't remember. Well, here I am at my new syndicate water for my first session on here. We're actually only a short drive from Graphic Innovations, where we left behind that white VW T6, which was in lots of bits, but I can't wait to see the finished product, and we'll show you that in the next episode of Carp Life. But if you can't wait till then to see what you can win, you could win right now an incredible looking Ford Transit Custom. Which just so happens to be that, my black Ford Transit Custom, and you could win that, my van, for just 99p. Right, let's get the van, while it is still my van, unloaded and get some rods in the water. Well, while I'm tying a few rigs, let me tell you about what I've been up to since the last episode of Carp Life. I'm beginning to think I can do this.
It's another £22.
A few weeks after I got back from the zoo lake in France, it was challenge time. And it was challenging. It was absolutely Baltic. Now, why we had to film a challenge in February in England, it was absolutely freezing, I just don't know. We could have gone anywhere in the world. We could have gone to Gran Canaria. That's really good in February, but no, we didn't. We went to Dodderton Lane Pits in Northamptonshire instead. Now, although it was absolutely freezing, I was still quite confident of catching a few fish. A few people had been test fishing these pits and caught some nice fish, even when it had been really, really cold. It hadn't opened officially to the public. But yeah, the guys who had been test fishing it had been doing quite well, even in really cold conditions. But I don't think the conditions they'd been fishing in were quite as cold as what I experienced when we filmed the challenge. So when we arrived, it had been, I think, -5 the night before. There was already a bit of ice in the margins, and temperatures were set to drop even further on the night that we were there. It was mega tough going. I don't think I'm giving away any spoilers or anything like that. The challenge has been out for a few weeks now, but it was such tough going. We awoke the next morning having had no indications, not seen any signs of fish whatsoever. It was such tough going, but despite that, we had a great time all the same. Harry didn't stay that night. He went home to a nice warm bed. So what's happening? You going home again, your massive house?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
But it was good to catch up with Kieran, the cameraman. He's the guy that you don't see behind the camera on the challenge. And yeah, we only ever really get to meet up on our filming days. So although we didn't catch there, we still had a great time. But yeah, that next morning, we decided it just wasn't going to happen where we were, and we needed to change venues, and we needed to do it quick if I was to stand any chance at all of passing the challenge. So we made our way over to Manor Farm Fisheries.
Good morning, Manor Farm Lakes.
Hiya there, I wonder if you could help me. It's Mark Pictures here from Fox.
Right.
I'm just out on the bank at the moment. We're just filming a challenge, and it's not going very well. And I was wondering if there was any availability on the Carp Lake at the moment. Okay, great. Right, thanks for your help. Thanks for that.
Right.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Right, mate. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. We had actually filmed one challenge before at Manor Farm Fisheries back in 2016, where I had to catch a fish off the top, middle, bottom, and on a pop-up from different lakes on the complex. And yeah, I passed that one quite comfortably, actually. It wasn't going to be as easy this time round, obviously, but things got off to an absolutely incredible start. And here we are up and running with this cracking 22-pound common. Very distinctive with his no pelvics and that twisted scale, double belly. Awesome fish on a bitterly cold day, and I'm absolutely buzzing. Here we are. Second carp in just a few hours, another 22-pounder. I feel like I'm flying at the moment. I've got the rods back out there. I feel like a bite can come at any moment. So after catching a couple of fish so quickly after changing venues, I thought this was game on. I was going to go on and smash the challenge and look like a bit of a hero. But it wasn't to be, really. I think the first 24 hours blanking on the other venue cost me dearly. And yeah, I went on to fail a challenge. It's fast approaching 11:20 now, and unless I get a double take and I'm able to land both those fish in the next 90 seconds, then I think that's me done. A lot of people ask me whether it does bother me if I fail a challenge or not. Yeah, it absolutely does. I think it's because I am quite a competitive person, not amongst other anglers. I'm not a match fisherman. I give that up a long time ago. But if I set myself a target or a challenge, then I like to be able to achieve that for myself. And if I'm not able to do so, then yeah, it really bothers me. So that was that. Challenge failed, and I was quite glad to see the end of that session, if I'm honest. And I was looking forward to going over to France and looking forward to some nice warm weather. That didn't fucking happen either. So just a week after we filmed the challenge, I was heading over to France to Lac de Larnaville. Now, to be honest, I hadn't actually heard a great deal about this venue before. The first I knew about it was when I dropped the guys over at the Farm Lake in France a message to see if I could do a bit of winter fishing over there. And they said it wasn't available over the winter, but why didn't I go and check out one of their other venues, Lac de Larnaville? It's only a small lake of around 4 acres in size in the Champagne region, just 10 minutes from the famous Lac du Der. Now, for this trip I was meant to be going on my own, but just a few days before the trip I took my van into my local garage for it to have a health check. This is something I always do before I go on a long drive overseas. It sounds like the sort of thing your dad would always tell you to do, really, but believe me, this has saved me from being in some really sticky situations when I've been abroad. There's nothing worse than being in a different country, sat on a hard shoulder, waiting for a recovery truck, not just because of the inconvenience, but also the sheer cost. They are so expensive. So it really is just worth taking your car to a garage just for a health check before you go on a big overseas trip. Now, the garage just so happens to be run by a really good friend of mine, Darren, who I have known for over 25 years. We used to go fishing together. Darren used to fish on my lake. He used to help out in my tackle shop that I had from the late 90s, early noughties. But after I sold my tackle shop, life and work kind of took over for both of us, and we only see each other occasionally these days, usually when I'm getting my van checked over. But while I was there, I said to Darren, "Do you fancy coming to France next week?" And he was like, "Yeah, of course."
Bon voyage.
Now, as always with my overseas trips, we headed over to France the day before our session, and we stayed in a hotel where we had a few beers and a nice meal and a good catch up. And the next morning we woke up feeling all refreshed and eager to get down to the lake. The week leading up to our trip to France, they'd enjoyed lovely, mild, spring-like conditions, and our arrival coincided with a Arctic blast. It just seems as though the weather that I'd experienced during the challenge had followed me there, and that's what we're going to be enduring during this session. So when we arrived at the lake that morning, it was cold. There was a sharp frost, a biting easterly wind blowing across the pool, but it was bright and sunny. And there were areas that were sheltered from this cold wind. And in these sort of calmer areas of water, we did notice a few little patches of bubbles coming up, which looked to us like feeding fish. So we completed a few more laps, and there were a few little noticeable signs coming up around the lake. And with the conditions set to deteriorate with every passing day, we both decided to make the most of what could be a very limited feeding spell. So with that in mind, we just got the bare essentials out of the van, just the rods, our end tackle, some bait and a chair and a bait boat. So with that in mind, we just got the bare essentials out of the van and headed over to our chosen swims. Just the rods and a net, a bucket of bait, some terminal tackle, and of course, a bait boat. So having seen a few fish fizzing on the back of the wind, I decided that those fish were likely feeding on naturals, given that no anglers had been fishing the lake the week before our arrival and no bait had gone in. So for that reason, I opted to go in with a natural bait approach, and I chopped up around half a kilo of worms, mounted a big bunch of worms with a hook bait. So I just loaded the rig along with a handful of chopped worms into the boat and dropped it close to where I'd seen the fish feeding. I decided just to fish with 2 rods initially, both with a big bunch of worms as hook bait with a handful of chopped worm around it, And in no time at all, I began to receive liners on both rods. The bobbin was bouncing up and down, so it was clear there was a lot of fish in this area on the back of the wind, and it didn't take long at all before one of them picked up the hook bait.
Well, what an absolutely incredible start to this session. 43 pound, 15 ounces. Rods had only been in the water a couple of hours. When we got here, we thought this was going to be really tough going. There was a frost this morning as we were driving to the lake, but we saw a few fish fizzing away. I dropped a rod on one of those fizzers. A couple of hours later, it's rattled off with this. What an amazing start.
Well, that was about as perfect a start to the session as I could have hoped for. Just a couple of hours angling, and I got a chunky common on the bank, 1 ounce under 44 pound. And after I'd slipped that fish back, the liners just continued. Both the rods, the bobbins were bouncing up and down. But all the while, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking this could end at any moment. It was already cold, and temperatures were meant to get even colder as we went on into the session. And I felt like I really would have to capitalise on any chances that presented themselves. And up until now, I'd only been fishing with 2 rods, but I really wanted to get a 3rd rod in position. So I fished that probably only 15-20 yards out in front of the swim in an area where I'd seen fish fizzing when we arrived. And finally, I had all 3 rods in the water. By now it was just about dusk, and already the unhooking mat was frozen solid, the landing net was frozen to the peg. It was already several degrees below freezing and meant to dip even further as we went into the night. As we went into the night, the liners just continued. They were quite savage as well, the bobbing all the way down, back up again. I was getting them that violent and that frequent, I'd almost kind of zoned out to the sound of my alarm, that they didn't sort of have me on edge anymore. That was until one of the liners just kept going and going and going, and I hooked into my 2nd fish of the session.
I was just about to climb in my sleeping bag for the night, and the same rod that did the 43 pounder, bobbins cracked against the rod, and I've just landed another one. It's not a bad fish at all as well. Have a look at that. 43 pound 9 ounce. And he's like a block of ice. He's really cold. It's it's a chilly old night tonight, but it hasn't stopped the fish feeding. Just as I was about to climb in my sleeping bag, the same rod that produced the 43 common rattled off again. And we got this, a 43 mirror. What an incredible start to this session. I was not expecting it to be like this.
Well, what an amazing start to the session. 2 bites, 2 43 pounders, and with conditions looking as tough as they were, at the start of the week, I'd have taken that. To catch a brace of 40s in really tough conditions, I was already absolutely made up. And after I slipped that fish back, all the liners, all the activity just seemed to stop immediately. For the rest of that night, I didn't have another beep. Luckily though for Darren, he got up and running in the early hours of the morning.
Well, it's 3:30 in the morning, and Dazza has got one. Well done, mate. 35 and a half.
35.9.
35. Sorry for doing it out of 1 ounce.
1 ounce. Yeah.
Well done, mate. Proper solid fish that.
Yep. Happy to get off the mark.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, there we were, our first night on the venue. We both caught fish, and now I felt like the pressure was off a bit. But when we woke up that next morning, it was so cold. There was ice in the margins. I'd had no more liners, no more action, and we'd seen no more signs of feeding fish at all. When we arrived on the first morning, there was clearly fish feeding. Fish were fizzing up. We'd seen a couple of fish roll and show as well, but this morning there was no activity whatsoever. Well, I just got to my Wainstones Fishery. I wanted to catch up with the guys who've been fishing here and see how they've got on. And it turns out they've had a really good session. They've had 9 fish between them, some beautiful scaly fish as well. And after the winter break, it really is nice to see anglers out on the bank once again and catching a few fish. So day 2, and when I woke up it was absolutely freezing. The unhooking mat had a layer of ice on it, the landing net was frozen solid. Not only that, it was now blowing a gale. And with such a ripple and a chop on the water, it made spotting fish or spotting any signs of feeding fish absolutely impossible. As that day wore on, I hadn't seen any signs of feeding fish or any signs of fish whatsoever. I'd received no liners or indications. I still felt as though the fish were probably in my area, but I just felt like their activity had slowed down due to the sudden drop in temperature. And I just felt as though any feeding spells would be very, very brief. Now, although I'd already caught a couple of fish, I do feel like Darren had chosen the best swim on this occasion, because he was fishing right in front of the incredible lodge that they have at Lac de Larnaville. And even though it started snowing that afternoon, Darren was able to stay warm and dry and make full use of all the facilities that this fantastic lodge has to offer.
So this is the lodge here at Lac de Larnaville. In here we've got the angler's kitchen, cooker there, sink, fridge, freezer, dining table, and if we go into the main lodge itself, look at this. Obviously you've got your kitchen area, or your kitchen diner, fridge, freezer, microwave. In here is the bathroom with a shower. There's your main living room. I see now why Darren chose to fish the swim. That's literally just out there. I understand now why he did that. You've got your living room here, TV, and in this room there's one of the bedrooms. This is a twin room. And I haven't been in this room. What's in here? We have another bedroom. Another twin room here. And another bedroom in here. Your double room. This place is absolutely fantastic. It's perfect if you want to bring your partner or family with you to make it a really nice family fishing holiday.
We're now on to day 3, and it was another very cold and frosty start to the morning. There was ice in the margins.
Cold night last night.
However, the one significant change on the previous day was the sun had put in an appearance. We had hoped that would sparkle some life or activity into the carp that had been relatively quiet over the past 24 hours. It was later that afternoon when the sun was at its highest. I received the first indication I'd had in over 36 hours. A really finicky, jittery take, which I initially thought was a liner, actually turned out to be this.
Well, hopefully you can hear me over the wind, but take a look at this. Look at that for a carp. That looks absolutely magnificent. It's been a long time in coming, this bite though. It seems a long time ago since I caught that 43 pounder, but this one is well worth the wait. Just just under £29. Not that it matters when they look as good as this though.
Well, that was an absolutely beautiful fish, and after such a long period of inactivity, it was so welcome, and I really needed that to kind of lift morale and lift my spirits. And Ross, the fishery owner, actually showed me a photo of that fish when it was first stocked into the lake. He showed me a photo of his daughter holding it. It was only like a single figure fish, and to see it growing onto the fish it is today, still looking absolutely pristine, I know as a fishery owner how rewarding that is. Also, to catch a fish like that on a bait rolled by hand always feels that little bit more rewarding.
So this is the rig that I used to catch that lovely scaly near 29 pounder. And yes, it's a Ronnie rig, which is now probably my go-to rig of choice these days. It's tied using the new Fox Edges wide gape long shank hooks, and I'm yet to have a hook pull using this pattern of hook. I've got a 100% success rate. Every fish I've hooked, I've got onto land. The hook bait I'm using there, that is one of my hand-rolled Carp Freaks specials. The Carp Freaks pop-ups aren't available in yellow yet, so I've made a batch myself at home in my kitchen, just using the yellow pop-up mix with some of the Carp Freaks liquid booster and a few other little bits and bobs that I've put in there as well. And it worked pretty good because I just caught a really nice scaly 29 pounder. I'm going to get this back out there now and I'll show you the mix that I used as well. Well, this is the mix that I used to drop around the yellow Carp Freaks hook bait, and all it is crumbed Live System boilies with some sweet corn and a big glug of the Live System liquid booster. All I've added to the boat is just a handful of this mix, just enough to tempt a bite, and I just dropped it in an area where I saw fish feeding the other day. I'm just going to get this rod in now, and hopefully there's chance of one more fish.
As we went into the next night, again, temperatures really plummeted, and when we woke up the next morning, we found that 2/3 of the lake was frozen. Darren actually had to reel his rods in that night. He awoke early hours of the morning. He was getting sort of single beeps and double beeps on his alarms, and when he went to investigate, he saw that ice was literally encroaching on him, and he had to reel in before he became frozen in. Luckily for me, the only bit of ice-free water happened to be kind of where my rods were positioned. So that morning, Darren decided to move swims and fish opposite me in the only remaining ice-free water. We're now going into the 4th night of this trip, and Darren and I both felt as though it was increasingly unlikely that any more fish were going to come our way. Temperatures were meant to get even colder that night, and it was looking very likely as though the lake was going to freeze completely. So for that night, we decided that it was probably best that we called it a day. I hate wimping out of a session early, but I felt as though in this instance it was the right thing to do. Instead, we both spent the night in the lodge. Darren cooked us both a really nice meal. We had a few beers and chatted about old times, and it was actually a really nice way to end this session.
This is very romantic. No candles though, huh?
No, we haven't got any of them.
I think you're trying to seduce me or something. This looks great.
Cooked his tea and everything.
Yeah. My own chef, my own waiter. Thank you.
When we woke up the next morning, we knew that we'd made the right decision because the lake was completely frozen over.
Well, last night was the coldest night by far, so it was no surprise to wake up this morning and see that the lake is frozen. And I don't think we could have timed this session much worse, really, because last week here in France it was nice and mild, spring-like conditions, and then when we arrive it just plunges straight back into winter. The day we arrived, that was the first frost, and it's just got colder and colder ever since then, really. But on that first day, obviously that quick cold snap obviously hadn't had enough of an effect on the water temperatures because those fish were still feeding when we got here. And I think we were very fortunate to make the most of that brief feeding spell. Obviously I caught those 2 40-pounders quite quickly. Darren had that 35-pounder. Then other than that lovely scaly 29 that I had, we've not seen any signs of feeding fish whatsoever. The water temperatures are so cold. When we arrived, the lake was quite coloured, so the fish had obviously been quite active, but it's just got clearer and clearer, and now you can see the bottom in places where you couldn't see them before. So it's obvious that the carp's activity has slowed right down. But either way, this has been a brilliant trip. It's been great to catch up with Darren. I haven't fished with Darren for years. So it's been fantastic to catch up with Darren, have a great social. And this lake is absolutely incredible. The lodge is fantastic, and it's quite obvious the potential this lake has. And I would love to return when it is warmer.
So yeah, it was one of those frustrating trips really, but from what we caught early on in this session, it is clear to see the potential that Lac de Larnaville has, and I would absolutely love to go back. The facilities there are absolutely second to none. The lodge is fantastic, and looking at the stock of fish on the photos on the wall, there's some amazing fish there, and I can't wait to go back.
Well, that's bringing the week to a close. It's been slightly shortened by the slightly frozen lake that's behind us. But great to be out. Not been out for quite a long time for myself. It was a last minute trip. Mark popped into the garage to pick his van up on Wednesday night and asked me if I fancied a trip to France on Friday. So organised everything as quickly as we could, dug some gear out the garage, and off we popped on Saturday. It's been a lovely place. The lodge has been absolutely fantastic. I've been fortunate enough to be in there where it was considerably warmer than what it was out here. I did manage to sneak one on the first morning, on the first night, 35.9, so at least I've had something I wouldn't have caught if I was sat at home. But a great weekend, and could thoroughly recommend it for anybody who wants to bring the family.
Look at all them out there. There's loads of them. First sort of warm sunny day we've had in a few weeks, and those fish are making the most of it for sure. Loads of them just under the surface. Well, we haven't really talked much about my Wainstones fishery, but over the winter months we have a bit of a downtime where we are only open on a few select dates. But we are now back open as normal, and it's great to see anglers out on the bank once again. But it really is great to be able to welcome anglers to the fishery once again. It's something that I do enjoy doing. I do enjoy meeting and greeting and showing people around, and it's always great to see fish when they're caught, and it's always nice to hear so many positive comments as well on how the fish are looking and how the lake is looking. And it has been a lot of hard work this winter maintaining the fishery and making it look as good as it does right now, but there's still loads of work to do. It is never ending. My main job this winter has been clearing the trees from around the water's edge. Moving the trees, it opens the pool up more and allows more wind to blow across the lake and move the water and oxygen around the lake. It prevents any areas from having low levels of oxygen. We do have 2 aerators at the pool anyway, but the more oxygen the better, and by allowing the wind to get at the lake and push the water and oxygen around the pool, it just allows for a better circulation of oxygen. I do think that managing a smaller venue can be harder than a larger venue. The smaller the venue, the smaller the body of water, the more susceptible they are to any sort of change. On a large venue, there may not be the need to clear trees around the venue. It's already getting plenty of wind hitting the surface of the water, moving that water around. But on a small venue, it's going to take very little before it affects the water quality. They say every action has a reaction, and the smaller the venue, the more this becomes the case. I think any koi keepers will tell you that water quality management is the biggest factor when it comes to fish keeping. And I think that's also the same on a carp venue. And because a smaller venue is more susceptible to change, it really is a constant battle trying to maintain the best water quality possible and ensuring that the fish thrive as best they can. It really is a constant battle maintaining the lake though. There's one bank here which I've not been able to do yet. I think around 2/3 of the pool I've managed to clear all the branches, but it takes about 2 minutes to actually chop them down, but then it takes hours to pick them up, move them, burn them. It's the clearing up that's the most time consuming part. We are actually lucky that we do have a good water source here. We have a pipe that comes from the stream just behind me, which flows in the pool here. So we have a good flow of water going through the pool, a good water exchange. So the water quality itself is actually pretty good, but I'm always wanting to strive for perfection and make it as close to perfect as I possibly can. Well, that's it for this episode of Carp Life. I've got absolutely loads of fishing and filming commitments in the coming weeks. Plus, I am heading back over to Étang de Deux Pierres. That's where I caught that 80-pounder back in the autumn of last year. We are going there just before the fish, hopefully just before the fish spawn. So I think we've got a chance of a real lump or two. So you'll find out more about that in the next episode of Carp Life. But before then, don't forget you can win this van for just 99p. So head over to the Capital Carp Competitions website or download their app to enter now. And the next time you see this van, you could be driving it away. Good luck. Am I stood weird? That's more like it, isn't it?
Looks more stiff, if I'm honest.
What, this?
Yeah.
Than that?
Yeah.
This is better?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. Don't say I've left the milk at home. That would be very, very... Have I left the milk at home? That would be dreadful. Black tea for me. Oh, you like that, don't you? I'm so glad I didn't bring Hans Gruber. Oh, Jamie's going to love sharing his sleeping bag with you tonight. He is. Oh, little puppy. Don't jump up, though. Don't jump up. Absolutely do not jump. You can jump up at Jamie, not me. That's it. Get rolling around in more mud, then go and jump up. Oh, yeah, you've done a good job there. Good job. Now you don't jump up. No, don't jump up. No, no, don't jump up. Go over there. Go on, go there. Go on, go over there. Go on. I'm not. What's the matter with you? Oh, I know you like my belly rubs, don't you? I'm just making sure she's a bit muckier for you. What was I saying? It was absolutely freezing on that. I can see water all over the lens, mate, so I'm not going to talk. I don't know if it needs cleaning. I'll give it a go. It was absolutely Baltic when we were there. We didn't really see any signs of fish. The camera's totally covered in water, mate. I'm not going to bother. Now, although it was a bit disappointing, did you just walk right into shot? Ah, thank you. So, which one do I get? You want that one back, do you? Okay. Is that a bird or a fish behind you? Oh, there he is. Ah, they're cheeky. Them grebes are cheeky. That sounded a bit shit. But, Jack, bit gay.
No.
Not gay. Not gay enough.
Which challenge are you referring to? One that's not gone out yet?
It's gone out, yeah. Gone out on Saturday or Sunday.
Did he say that? I just thought you said that you didn't catch it.
Didn't, from there. And then we moved venues. I'm going to say that in a bit. I haven't finished yet.
Oh, right. I'm going to say, that's what I'm listening to it going, which one is it? Because you did catch something.
Yeah.
I've seen it yet, so I've no idea.
Yeah. Right, let me finish.
Sorry, I thought it sounded like you were finishing.
Anyway, so when it comes to the challenge, if I do fail, then yeah, it smarts a bit. I feel like I've let myself down more than anyone else. Yeah? No? You're like, what the that's a bit shit.
It's not sure.
There you go. Challenge failed. That was dog wasn't it? Yes. Are we still recording?
Yeah.
Ah, right, sorry. Sounds like the sort of thing your dad would do, wouldn't it, this? But, I choked. It really has prevented me from being, shut up! Very crunchy biscuit. I decided that those fish were likely feeding on natural, choking on a oatie. It was perfect to start to the session, as I could have hoped for. Just a couple of hours angling, crisp delivery. Thank you very much, cheers. Oh, thanks, dinner, thank you. But their activity, and I think no point, is there? Yeah? It's cold here when that sun goes in. Fish like that on a bait that's been rolled. I might as well do this as real. And the Arctic. If you say Arctic, it's a massive exaggeration, isn't it?
That's not really.
Yeah.
Nice on the water.
Yeah, there's no penguins though, was there? So, yeah, none of that was usable, by the way. I don't know what else I need to say.